Obviously, iDubbbz thing has been pretty in the news lately, and
Yeah.
I actually don't fully know your opinion on this stuff, but I just kind of get the sense from what I've seen in some of our conversations that we probably fall on opposite sides of reaction to.
Oh, you're pro Anissa now?
Uh,
You're pro Anissa? I'm pro Anissa. I'm team Anissa. So wherever you fall.
I actually don't
on
know
that whole
shit about
thing.
her, to be completely honest with you, other than the fact that she's an OnlyFans model. That's the only thing I know
Yeah.
about her right now.
Well, I'm her number one fan.
Okay, well, as her number one fan, why don't you tell me a little bit about her?
Well, you see, Anissa is a talented young girl who, from an early age, was showing signs of promise. But unfortunately, her parents were really just not seeing it. They didn't really give her the attention she deserved. And she lived under the stairs in sort of a stowaway closet for a long time.
Yeah, her
Until
name
she
was actually
turned-
originally Harry Potter.
She turned 18 and, Boogie came and visited her and said, "Hey, the power of the internet coming through your life through the power of the internet." And something clicked in her mind that day. And then she started using the internet. She discovered iDubbbz and Leafy is here and Chris Ray Gun. And she said, you know what? Why not me? Why don't I be one of these cultural icons? And why not pick iDubbbz? He's charming, attractive, doesn't give a fuck. He's edgy, handsome man. And so I think ever since then, it was sort of love at first sight, love at first Discord call, really.
Story so far.
And her and Ian just they got married the next day. And she started an OnlyFans to support their family. And Ian started boxing. And now they're sort of a power couple that's running the internet. So that's... And then somewhere along the way, this guy, Sam Hyde, was trying to bully iDubbbz, and he almost succeeded. He almost got away with it. But, iDubbbz is resilient. He could have burned a bridge, but he
grew a mullet and just carried forward.
He carried forward, and he's a filmmaker, so he knows how to take a guy like Sam Hyde and put him in a box. So, not actual boxing, of course. I mean, like a video box or something. But
that box's name was Albert Einstein.
No, it was Ian Joma. Get it right.
No, you said he put Sam Hyde in a box. Okay, I'm just trying to.
Oh,
you seem to not know your history very well. Okay.
I thought
the box.
Well, you wanted a recap.
Einstein.
Ian Joma, from then on, has been persecuted, made fun of, berated, really, because of all these, I don't know, women haters, bigots, Nazis, and mudbloods. And that's kind of where we are now. And now he's having to make these lengthy apology videos just to even stay afloat, because this part is factual. I mean, this has all been factual, but this part is definitely important. Right after the Creator Clash 2, iDubbbz was on stream with Anissa, and he said that they're in dire straits financially, that they're not making any money. So
did that actually happen?
I think he did say that. He did say like they're not really, they didn't make any money. They're not making that much money right now. And where is his source of income? Think about it. Like, other than her OnlyFans, do you think iDubbbz, I mean, he just unlisted all his content cops, okay? Because he was bigoted, and those are negative, and those were causing hatred. And other than Creator Clash, I mean, what other content is he profiting off of right now? Probably not much. So, and he did say that on stream. Yeah, I saw a clip of it. We can put it in this. We'll get the editor to put it in.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. Like, realistically, yeah, like that kind of puts everything, like that kind of, whatever. That's a separate topic, because one could say, well, what is his motivation really for making these videos? Maybe he's just even trying to get some money, trying to get some relevancy to make more videos, because, regardless of whether he's sorry or not, or what the content is, it's just like he probably needs to make some money anyways.
Well, are you saying that do you actually think that like his recent videos talking about like his perspective on things are disingenuous and just money grabs?
I don't know if they're completely disingenuous. I'm just saying that might be a factor. That's all I'm saying, because he doesn't have any money. He doesn't have any income right now. Where is he getting the money from in terms of videos? He doesn't have any popping off videos. He doesn't post consistently. And he just unlisted all of his most popular videos, and the internet hates him right now. So really, I mean, the fact that Ian is in this situation, I think he should start a GoFundMe and people should support him. I think he should start a Kickstarter, actually.
Yeah. Well, that's
so what do you have to say about that?
I mean, I didn't know that he was broke. That like I thought the Creator Clash events would have brought in a lot of money.
Well, no, it went to charity.
Oh, is that how that works? I don't know. I never fucking watched these boxing events.
Oh, it went to charity. It's all for charity.
Well, that's cool, I guess. I don't know. I don't really think that he's struggling for relevancy, though, like because of those events.
And the charity is Sex Workers Anonymous.
Is it really?
No.
Oh, okay. I would have believed that. You could have lied to me. I would have believed it. Like 100% would have believed that.
Yeah, right. Probably will be. But yeah, I mean, that's a separate, who knows? That's a little bit of a gray area, but I'm just bringing that up because nobody really talks about it, but it's potentially a factor. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I mostly just wanted to talk about like, clearly, like you said, the internet hates him right now. They missed the old iDubbbz. He even made a video with that in the title. And honestly, like, while I do understand why people miss the old iDubbbz, I kind of think that he doesn't deserve the hate.
What do you think what's your assessment of the situation? Why does he not deserve the hate? And what do you think about his apology video?
Well, for one, I don't really see what justifies hatred. Like, I can understand people being like, oh, this guy isn't cool anymore. I don't want to watch his videos. But I don't really get why they hate him. Like, to me, that doesn't really, like, I guess the hatred maybe is coming from his thing with Froggy or something like that. Which I thought was, I'll admit, I thought that was pretty stupid, like the way that was handled. It just seemed unprofessional. But to me, after watching his video and listening to like the experiences he had that sort of started the change in mindset that he has now, like, I don't know, it made perfect sense to me. Like, the way I see it is he went from, being the iDubbbz that we all knew before, who is like all about making like really airtight arguments for like why he was criticizing certain people, and he was funny and edgy, to basically having those experiences like that trans girl thinking that he would automatically hate her just because of his content and stuff like that, and sort of just realizing that, like, yeah, obviously, when you make certain kind of videos, like, there will be, like, one of the consequences among many things is that, like, some people will get offended. And to me, it seems like he completely did not realize that beforehand, then suddenly was, like, smacked in the face by the reality of, like, that's a thing that happens. And then, like, it just sort of, like, caused him to become more aware and empathetic of everyone. And then now he's, like, taking it a bit to... He's doing the progressive thing. And he's, like, taking everything to the extreme. Like, oh, if I don't want to offend anyone, so I'm going to do nothing offensive. And I'm going to, like, go, like, way overboard and just eliminate all nuance. But, like, if you know me, and you know
at least
me, like...
I'm glad he apologized to black people. That was needed. We needed to hear him say that, because after all the times he said, you know what, it's, that was needed. I think that was needed.
Yeah, and I could tell that you're serious, which I really appreciate.
The black community welcomes him with open arms now.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I keep going.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I get why people look at this as, like, step backwards, but I actually think it's a step forwards. Because the way I see it is, there's a difference between being edgy because you have no concept of, like, how it's going to affect anyone and just don't care, and then being edgy while knowing, like, how it affects people and picking and being nuanced about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of hard to explain what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying the difference between being indiscriminately offensive for the sake of being offensive and shock value versus having a more calculated approach.
Pretty much, yeah. Like basically just coming from a greater sense of awareness and I think that I think that like you have to go through what not necessarily like the way he's going through it, but I think that in order to get to like that endpoint, you have to like appreciate what he's currently appreciating, which is just like, you know, the sense of empathizing with other people and other communities and shit like that. Like, I think you have to go through that phase first in order to come out of it like truly based. Whereas before, it's just like it was just like you're ignorant. Like before, you're just fucking Nick Fuentes or
you
something.
Think you have to apologize to black people first before you can be aware?
I don't think he has to do any apologizing, actually. But I think that he has to go through, like, I think he has to come out of this and realize that he doesn't have to do any apologizing and that his videos actually weren't a problem. But I think that, like, he needs to first completely understand why people think it's a problem before getting to that conclusion, which he seems to be in that phase right now.
I think this is iDubbbz's dark night of the soul. Currently, I think he's currently going through it, and I think he'll look back on it later and realize it. Because let's treat this with some reverence. I'm going to be serious for a second, there is something to, you know, just indiscriminately being offensive for the sake of that shock factor, just trying to get people's attention. And that's definitely what was happening, not just with him, but with a lot of YouTubers in 2016.
Yep.
However, and I do think that's actually a good step to start with. It's like, if I can make an analogy to music or culture in that way, it's like punk music, you know, it's like punk rock. It's like, just fuck you, fuck the system. It's just kind of wildly protesting with your words, with your creations, with your art, with whatever it is, being like a big fuck you to social norms, standards, and like I said, like sort of the system, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good step, but I also agree with you that it at some point has to be reeled in. Otherwise, it's just, well, I guess for one, it's shallow. If that's your only conclusion is just continually saying the N-word over and over, it's like, okay, great. You're just annoying. You know, it's like nothing you're saying is substantive. But on the other end, where iDubbbz has gone is more like he's gone completely in the other direction, almost out of shame or out of guilt. That's how it comes off to me when he's speaking. He seems shameful and guilty about what he's done and the fact that he's built his whole career off doing that. And I feel like another route he could have gone is, instead of complete 180ing or trying to erase history or trying to, you know, go back on everything he said and reinvent his image completely, which comes off as forced and artificial. What he could do instead is just kind of what he was starting to do, like mature his content, his subject matter, and actually have more room for discussion and questions, like the Airsoft Fatty documentary. It was good. Like, you know, it's not, even though it wasn't a scathing content cop or sensational hit piece, it was actually a good video and it performed really well. So I think that's proof that he kind of was on the path, or at least is capable of making more, I would say, mature, thought out, and maybe content that has more of a point to it other than just tearing someone down. Right. So like that would have been, I feel like just doing more of that would have been the path forward. But at some point along the way, him going to focus on Sam Hyde and making the documentary he did on Sam in the way that he did was like the worst move he could have made, because he kind of went all in on like trying to portray him in a certain way. It didn't work out. And then he came out with this sort of half-assed documentary. Then Sam came out with his, that was, you know, he came out with his before that kind of took the punch out of iDubbbz's anyways. Right. And, you know, that's kind of where things really took a downward turn in terms of his content, at least. But anyways, but we can talk more about that in a bit. But I just mean to say that you're right that it's, you know, doing the same thing and just shouting the N-word over and over isn't a good way forward. But I also feel like that is actually a good place to start. not necessarily not shouting the N-word, but my point is the rebellious punk phase or whatever of one's career, of one's creations is good.
Well, it's like everything leads to the next thing, right? It's like that rebellious punk phase exists because there was like corporate happy YouTuber people all over the place, right? Which like inspires that sort of like rebelliousness. But the way I see it is, and like, I mean,
but he's become one of those corporate friendly YouTubers now. That's the thing.
I don't agree with that. I don't think he's become corporate. I think that what you said about guilt and shame is more accurate. I think that he feels shame for like his previous content and is now like doing a hard 180.
Yeah, but like, why do you think he feels shame about it?
Well, I kind of see it as like, I mean, I'll go figure that I would fucking bring Spiral Dynamics into this, but I see it in Spiral Dynamics terms a little bit because it seems to me like he like sort of exhausted in ideology and like perspective, and then now he's like diving headfirst into the next one. And I think the reason he was so hard 180 is because of the experiences he talked about in his video, like seeing people.
Okay, well, I want to challenge that for a second before we get to the experiences he talked about in real life. I don't think he had a fully formed philosophy to begin with. You know, the closest thing you can say is, and that he even said in the video, is regarding offensive words, either all of it's okay or none of it's okay.
Right.
That's an interesting perspective, but it's definitely not a philosophy. It's not like a hard
I'm not
belief.
saying philosophy though. So what I'm saying is like before his worldview was simply like cold and rational. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm going to approach this in an extremely logical way. And it was a sort of like a more materialistic like perspective on things. It was just like, I'm going to take things at face value and be very cold and rational about it. And like that is enough to justify whatever comes next. And then it's like these experiences.
I don't know if I agree with that, but okay. I mean, because I feel like
part, I'm guessing.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't think that's all he had to offer or all his perspective was, because the analysis he offered and the reasons he gave for a lot of his best videos on content on other creators was admired and respected, because it wasn't just that he was willing to be completely rational. It's also like he was having fun. He was being creative. It was
sure. But that, I mean, that's like a sort of separate piece though, right? Because it's like, if he was having fun and being creative but making gay ass content, like people would still not like it, right? So, and I like, you know, arguably anyways, he was having fun and being creative in his Sam Hyde documentary, but it was bad. So like,
I don't think that is. I don't think that's a. I wouldn't say that, and I think there's good reason not to say that, because the energy, the perspective, and the whole premise of that video is completely different than like. Anyways, whatever. Now we're just getting into the weeds, but I think you were making a greater point, so I want to let you keep going.
So basically what I'm trying to say is that like before he had this much more like linear, rational, like view of the world, basically, and then that was like the basis for all the claims and arguments and everything that he made in his video. And it seems like now that he's had this experience with his fans who like think that he's racist and like all these, he like, it's like it touched him on a personal level. He realized like, oh shit, like there's an emotional component to all of this that like
his fans think he's racist? Do you think most iDubbbz viewers that enjoyed the content views him as a racist?
I don't think that. I'm talking about his experiences specifically, like the ones that he talked about in his video. Like when he met that trans girl and was like, I know you probably hate me, but can I take a picture with you?
Yeah, well, but like his conclusion that he drew from meeting those people is not necessarily the logical one either. Like he could just as easily have gone away with that and been conclusion. Like, yes, sure. 100% but also you have to, you're kind of giving him a lot of leeway and charity. And I guess that's maybe a good, counter to my position, which is that there's also so much he's not saying and he's not going to say. And I guess that's all speculation, but that's what we're doing anyways. I mean, there is really a lot of signs that show Anissa had a huge and continues to have a huge sway on what he says and what direction he takes his career. Would you agree with that?
Do you mean like literally like career, like not his perspective on the world, but literally like the
both?
Because I would
Probably
100%
both.
like agree on the perspective on the world, but I have no fucking clue what her input is in his career, so to speak.
Don't you think that his perspective on the world influenced his career decisions?
Yes, 100%. And I do think that she influenced him in terms of his perspective on the world. So you can why don't we incorporate the fact that he met her with meeting those fans and having those experiences that he talked about. We'll put those in the same category.
His relationship with her is one of those, is probably the most important experience in the last 4 to 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. No,
undeniably.
I think that she is like your typical like progressive, empathetic, emotional SJW type person, whatever you want to say. And that she's certainly pushed him in that direction. And the combination of like being opened up to that kind of thinking with having the experience he's talked about in his videos probably is the reason that he made this hard 180. Because now he's like personally seeing the emotional consequence of his videos. Not to say that that's the only consequence, because I would say it's not even the most important consequence, but it's the one that a consequence he did not really take in the reality of until he experienced it personally, from having the fans think that he's racist and shit like that. And so I think that is like in a spiral dynamics way, that's like he exhausted his like stage orange and then moved into stage green. It's like he exhausted his like logical material like perspective of the world, got smacked in the face with like emotional consequences, and then was like, I've been neglecting this my entire life, and now this is the only thing that matters to me, and I'm just going to dive deep into this, which is the wrong move, of course. I think that you should be taking everything like with grains of salt and like, picking and choosing a little bit, but it makes sense to me that he is going on this path. And I think that like now he's going to have some sort of like similar exhaustion of this worldview in order for him to get to like the much better, more nuanced one that comes on the end of this.
I will compare him to Sam Hyde's career. And I think there's some interesting parallels to draw or contrast really, which is that let's go back to 2016. World Peace is canceled. So Sam Hyde has a show syndicated on Adult Swim, the dream of any comedian, and gets canceled after the first season. Everybody kind of knows this by now, for being a little bit too edgy, controversial, that kind of stuff. But even though people loved it, they adored it. And so then Sam kind of goes, after that gets canceled, more or less goes into like a reclusive mode, I guess, like a hermit mode. Like he lives with his mom. He's not putting out content other than like funny phone videos. He's basically, his career kind of took a nosedive, more or less after that. That's around the same time that iDubbbz, H3, all these people that are popular today
exploded,
were huge on YouTube and getting bigger. And iDubbbz especially was getting huge with his Content Cop series. So iDubbbz is basically gaining momentum with somewhat edgy content while Sam is losing his career over it. Okay. And then fast forward a few more years, what you had, after the rest of the Content Cops, the Rice Gum one, the Airsoft Fatty documentary, the Dax Flame documentary, after all that, you could say that iDubbbz's career kind of took a more, it definitely didn't get, any more edgy than after the Leafy or Keemstar one. It became more tame, more accessible, more marketable, more corporate friendly. I'm not saying that was his goal, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just saying it's,
just the facts.
Yeah. And then Sam kind of over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, from 2016 to 2022, was kind of brewing his own little podcast, his own clips, his own friend group. And then they started making content. And then now where they are now is that they kind of had a crossing over path with that documentary that they both made different versions of. And, like I said, Sam beat Ian to the punch. And when that first happened, we even have this on the Gush channel. I even called it. I'm like, this is a historic moment in internet culture. This is going to change the way people view iDubbbz and Sam Hyde. It's going to get millions of views. And that was like a week after it came out. And that's more or less what happened. Not a hard prediction to make. I'm just saying that like, I kind of saw this coming. And And now where is iDubbbz now? So he's his career is kind of on the rocks, or at least it's, his fans, the people that have helped build him to where he's at now. A lot of them are turning their back on him. A lot of them are not enjoying what he's been doing lately or what he's been saying lately. And they don't really view him as a figure of moral authority or guidance or truth. And I think if you go to the core of it, of what made those content cops special and admired and respected, is not just that they were well made or funny or entertaining. I think, like you said, they were logical breakdowns of different people and topics, but also I think there was some truth there, and anytime you're being logical, there's going to be some truth. Like, he was a truth sayer in a sense. Yep. Like I think that's why people admired him, is because he was willing to say shit that others weren't. And he, got his facts in order. He wasn't just making it up, and now I think that things have reversed quite a bit, where I think Sam is kind of viewed as this more truth sayer, you could say, as somebody who's more based, whatever, somebody who
really more based, but
he's more of a guide to people. He's giving advice.
I don't know if I would put them in this as like, I don't know if I would say that Sam is sort of like filling the spot that Ian was previously with Content Cop.
Not necessarily, but it definitely it's not a coincidence, and it's not by mistake that as soon as those two documentaries came out, Sam started getting a lot more popular, and Ian started getting less popular. And it's because they have a crossover of audience. It's not exactly the same, of course, but I'm just saying they're both in a similar spot in terms of internet culture, because they were both comedians. They were both engaging in edgy humor. They were both making pretty groundbreaking content. But the only difference is now Ian is doing this creator clash. He's putting everything into this creator clash thing, which is only once a year, is another YouTuber boxing event, is having a bunch of other YouTubers that are already well known and pretty famous. And it's for charity. It's, I would say, based on the PR messages they've given out, how they've handled things with Froggy, it is a very corporate sounding, or at least corporate presenting type of event. And whatever, it's its thing. I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's definitely not as interesting, in my opinion, as what iDubbbz used to be doing. And meanwhile, Sam is making, fish, from Fish Tank to World Peace 2 to all the videos and people he's collaborating with. There's a lot of new content coming out from not just him, but the people on his team. Yeah. And I would argue that's more groundbreaking. So, when it comes to the whole empathy thing, or moving into a different stage of purple, yellow, or green, or whatever you want to use for the spiral dynamics perspective in this case, how do you reconcile, like, what is your analysis then of how Sam has progressed? Because in many ways, I don't think he's really compromised, or at least not compromised as much as Ian has he hasn't gone back on what he said and apologized. He's actually just kept going.
Here's the interesting thing is that, and I feel like you might not like my take on this, but I think that Sam has been consistent throughout all of this, right? Even when he was making, in his down years, and he wasn't making as much content, and he obviously seemed a lot more angry during those years than he does right now. But regardless, he's kind of always been doing his thing, and he's been innovating creatively on what he does. Fish Tank is pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen anything like Fish Tank yet. As a creative, Sam has continued to innovate, but as a perspective giver, or personal, whatever, I don't think he's actually grown at all. I think that he's kind of just the same that he was 10 years ago. As a person, and as the thoughts that he has, he's just more, he creatively has grown, but philosophically or whatever hasn't grown. Whereas
I don't think you could even separate those two things. I don't think you could grow creatively without growing philosophically.
I don't agree with that. I think
also I would cite, even aside from that, as an abstract, just the way Sam presents things, he was way more willing to be edgy and offensive and say do these arguably actually racist things in the past 5-6 years ago. And now he doesn't do any of that. He just has, his content has continually, I would say, gotten more creative and interesting, but he's he's way less offensive and racist.
That's more to do with not wanting to lose what he has than it has to do with how he actually feels about the world.
How do you know that?
You're right. I don't know that for sure. He has talked about it in the iDubbbz documentary. In fact, he's like, I can't say these things anymore because you just can't say that on the internet and like get away with it. But it's not like where iDubbbz's perspective is, which is like, I can't say that anymore because I don't want to hurt people. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's the opposite. I think Sam, well, not the opposite. This is my perspective, which is that I don't think Sam is avoiding saying those things because he's like, oh, I just want to say the N-word. I just want to say racist stuff. Maybe there's a degree of that, and he doesn't want his image to be tarnished. But I also think he's genuinely not as interested in just being the shock factor comedian, offensive person. The culture has changed. You know, it's no longer as funny anymore to just say those things because, okay, fine. We've seen it before. We've heard it before. What else do you have to offer? And whereas iDubbbz, I think if the culture had swayed more towards his direction, he'd still be doing the same shit. If the internet was cool with him doing all that, if Anissa was cool with him doing all that, but I don't think he would have a change of heart.
Is cool with him doing that. Like if he posted a content cop today that was like identical in nature to his old content cops, people would love it. People want 2016 YouTube still. Like people are still like 2016 was the golden era of YouTube to this day. They're still saying it in 2023. I think culture hasn't changed. I think, and that's why Sam is successful and Ian in his
If culture hasn't changed, then why? If culture hasn't changed, then why would Sam have to censor himself? Why wouldn't he just do the same things he was doing back then? And why wouldn't it be successful?
Okay, let me put it this way. Culture, it's like there's a giant like it's like the silent majority hasn't changed, but the vocal minority has, basically. So it's like culture changed in the way that like we have like woke culture and cancel culture and all that stuff like that in place, but at the same time, like the vast majority of people want iDubbbz to just do what he was doing before. Do you know what I mean? And so in a financial sense, you're talking about how he's struggling financially. If he really just cared about the money, he'd just do that because he would get way more money, from that. He would get way more support from his fans. He could like grow on Patreon and all this crap. Meanwhile, Sam, maybe he's not being quite as bombastic because he's lost his career to it before and doesn't want to lose his career again. But for the most part, like he's pretty similar to who he's always been. Like his comedic styling is still pretty similar, and it works because people still want that, just like they did 7 years ago. And so the way I see it is that, like, the way I reconcile all this is that you're gonna hate this, but iDubbbz has outgrown the majority of people on the internet. And so it's actually their stagnation that is the reason why, like, he's.
I think his content has stagnated though.
Well, he hasn't produced content.
Yeah. So then that's in itself proof of that.
Proof of what?
So then he doesn't make content. So then how can you say the internet is stagnant if he hasn't even made anything for them to enjoy in a modern day? I mean, he's made a few, but
right? Like we have his perspective, like we have the things that he says, and they don't like that. They just want the old iDubbbz. But the fact that they want the old iDubbbz is like just testimony to the fact that they're literally saying like we want things the way they were, not like something new.
I think they just wanted more. I mean, like I said, the Airsoft Fatty video did incredibly well. That wasn't the old iDubbbz. That was something new. But he pivoted really hard from that into this more social political sphere by focusing on Sam Hyde. It was his choice to focus on Sam Hyde, or whoever pressured him or whoever influenced him to do that, or himself, whatever was the pretense of that, and to present it the way he did. I mean, he kind of made his own bed in terms of like, yeah, he could have just kept doing his own thing, in other words, and he would have still had a lot of supporters and new fans and people adoring the new direction he's gone in. I don't think people only want...
But it would be new fans, though. It wouldn't be old fans who like it as much. Like, there would be overlap, of course, but...
Let's look at Joji and Max Mofo and Anything for Views. You know, the people that were with him in that who were also on the come up in 2016. Well, you know, you compare iDubbbz to them and the career paths they've taken. So Joji is now like a world-renowned artist, musician, singer. Max Mofo and Anything for Views are they're kind of doing the more, I would say, like the 2016 era stuff still. They are still kind of doing the same. I mean, a little different, obviously, but they are pretty successful. So right. Joji evolved. They more or less stayed consistent. And iDubbbz, what did he do? He kind of didn't do any. I mean, he kind of just went in a complete, like, I don't know what to make of that, other than he kind of didn't reinvent himself, didn't even make that much more consistent content, and is now going back on everything he said. Like, maybe he's starting a new direction, but I don't really care. I don't really think my grievance or my whatever, I don't care about what iDubbbz did. I don't care what he said. I don't care that he's apologizing. I guess I care that people are as invested as they are, because from my point of view, and I guess this is a little projection, I guess, but it's like, I feel like these days, especially, you have to earn the attention of anyone on the internet to have any audience at all. Like, to even have an audience of people who care about you is way above and beyond what most people have. Like, I feel like hardly anyone is paying attention to what I'm doing or what we're doing. So let alone people caring about every little word that I say or my relationship with my girlfriend. My point is, like, people should just stop paying attention to iDubbbz if they really feel strongly about him. Like, I get that there's been drama lately.
I agree with that.
But after this video, it's like, if you continually hate watching him or whatever, you're just making the internet a worse place. And it's like, he doesn't deserve the attention he has. So I agree with you on that. But he also he basically doesn't deserve to get, like, this isn't a big deal. Like, he's not doing anything interesting. Let's move on. That's kind of what I feel like.
I 100% agree. And I think it's like, it's funny because we're agreeing on this, but we're fucking talking about him right now. But like,
yeah, but we're offering, but who else is saying, yeah, but whatever. We're just giving our perspective on a big topic.
And I think that the reason we're talking about this is because we're actually talking more about the reaction of others to this situation than him himself.
Right.
But yeah, like, whether or not he's been making content or not, I mean, like, if you want to really boil it down to brass tacks, then, like, yeah, maybe he has been making content, but he's been throwing these, like, enormous events. So, like, in a way, he has, like, earned relevancy in that sense, because, like, he is the quote unquote mastermind behind these events. So, you know, like, and they're huge. People are attending them en masse and they're getting a fuck ton of viewership. So, like, he is doing something, and it is different from what he was doing before, for sure. So, like, there is something there. But regardless of, like, how active he's been as a content creator, I think that, like, the hatred that he has is actually, like, not that I like his perspective right now, but I do think that, like, he has grown as a person, and everyone else, that the people who hate him are kind of stuck in 2016 mode. And, like, that's where this hate is coming from. And while I don't think that, like, I think that iDubbbz has a fuck ton more growing to do, which is rich for me to say because I don't even fucking know him. But I just think that, like, he's way too balls deep into, like, his current perspective, and it's, like, to a serious point of detriment in terms of worldview. But I ultimately see it as progress. And like I said, like, ultimately it just comes back to what I was saying before, which was that, like, he needs to go through this sort of, like, phase in order to, like, truly be nuanced on the other side. It's like he needs to relearn why the content cops are good, from the perspective of, like, having the experiences he's had now.
Yeah. I guess all growth isn't necessarily in the right direction. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I
can kind of see what you're saying, but
yeah, it's just like, it's not that it's not necessarily in the right direction, but it's almost like it's like, if you want to say, like, going from bottom up is growth, it's like he took a step up and then just, like, went super hard sideways from there, you know, and so, like, everything he's doing now is, like, not actually up or down, it's just, like, horizontal or something like that. And and it's like that horizontal is like a trap. It's like a distraction. Yeah.
Well, that's a stagnation, is it not?
It is, but the difference is that he at least took a step upwards, whereas I feel like Sam Hyde and the people who want 2016
What was the step
YouTube,
upwards? What was the step upwards, though?
The step upwards was the realization of, like, empathy, essentially. Like, the realization that, like, oh man, like, everyone is impacted in some way by these things, and, like, you know, like, these people think that I hate them, and, like, they understanding that, like, those feelings exist. I think that he's distracted by them now and thinks that they're like the only thing that matter, which is not true at all. At all. Offensive humor is good. I stand by that. But I think that it's better to be offensive after having realized that and like being critical about how you're doing it rather than just like not knowing it at all, which is where I kind of feel like Sam Hyde is more in that like territory of like not having empathy for anyone really, and just like, you know, he's more similar to 2016 iDubbbz than iDubbbz is.
Okay, well then I would say 2016 iDubbbz was more was a person that was more willing to learn and grow and had more potential than current iDubbbz does. Because I'm not even just looking at content. I'm also looking at who the person is. And obviously we have limited views of both of these people. But
yeah,
in the case of Sam Hyde, there are certain things you could see. Like he's surrounded by people who he's working with, who he's friends with, who seem to care an awful lot about the content they're making. And they seem to look up to Sam. I've seen the moments where he is real being kind of, you know, he's capable of being respectful and empathetic and those types of things. I've seen him in person. I've hung out with him in person, and he's a pretty quiet, like stoic kind of person. He's not like this super animated, bringing attention to himself at all. And obviously those are, you know, just small pieces. But like when I see Ian, I see this guy that's alone in his room with blank walls, talking to his camera. There's no people he's working with. He hasn't expanded his network, or if he has, they're definitely not close to him. They're not people that we see him working with all the time. And his wife is probably the strongest relationship he has, and probably the most influential relationship he has. And I see her, and I see the talking points he's making, the things he's saying, bigoted and these different things. And it's like, that's 2016 as well. But that's the opposite side that he was on. That the stuff he's saying, if it came out from some random YouTuber or some random person, the words he's saying that he's apologizing with, that I was bigoted, that I'm sorry, I'm offensive, I'm empathetic, yada, yada, yada. I've heard all this before, and so has his audience. And that's why it's not only not a sign of growth, it's a sign of like opposite, like he's going the wrong way. That's what it seems like to me. You know, he's changing, but not for the better. But and I just see him going.
I disagree. Because I think that like all that stuff, yeah, you're right. That stuff was around in 2016. And if anything, has become more dominant over time since 2016.
Yeah.
But, and as much as I fucking hate like annoying progressive SJW type people and like intersectional feminism bullshit, I do think that is like progress. And I do think that that's like I think that you can't have the picture without that piece of the puzzle. And that like before he didn't have that piece of the puzzle, he still doesn't have the picture because he's missing the part that's like realizing the flaws of that in addition to understanding the importance of it. But like, I think it's necessary. Like, I really do.
I feel like that's a trap though. I feel like it seems like that's the way forward. And there's a reason, there is a true reason that it seems that way. In other words, it's an appealing perspective because there is truth to the idea that we should feel for what others feel, that we should care about what others feel, we should care about the impact we have on the world and on each other. That's all true, right?
Yeah.
But to then take that and then to use it as a way to silence yourself and silence others and prevent anything from questioning this dogmatic view that there's a few protected people who sit on this hierarchy above the rest of us that need to be protected and given special care and special treatment. And also the other side of that is the other groups of people, the majority or what is viewed as the majority or the males or the white people or whatever it is that it happens to be, the straight people, that they're like the enemy, they're the oppressors, they're the bigots. That's the other side of it. So it's like taking something true that we should care about all people and we should be somewhat, understanding and inclusive in these kinds of things, but it's taking it in a direction that's.
Yes, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think this is like exactly accurate. So like the truth parts are the important parts are the growth parts. It's like the realization of those truths are the growth. The distraction, sideways, horizontal movement parts are the like the what you're saying about like, oh, like it's specifically white men, or it's like we have to like not we have to be so careful not to offend anyone because of this, and like all these like ridiculous extreme measures that are like almost like reverse racist and all these kind of all that bullshit. Like I think that's all like I 100% agree. Like the truth's important, and that's what I'm talking about when I say like that's growth. But then all that other bullshit that we associate with like progressive culture today is the sideways distraction crap that doesn't need to be there.
And in the same token, there's a similar way you can analyze the edgy, the other side of it, or like the quote unquote racist or the edgy humor side of it. Like that also has its stagnation or its horizontal trajectory of like, I mean, no offense I don't know this guy, but Frank Hassel seems like a good example where it's like, okay, he kind of takes that to the extreme, or he has in his previous videos. I don't know what he's like now. Maybe he's a nice guy, whatever. I saw him talking to Airsoft Fatty. That looked nice. But my point is like, the other extreme is like just being offensive to the point where you're a public nuisance and you're publicly harassing people just for the sake of it. Like, to me, that's not really funny or interesting or groundbreaking. It's just, you're just a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? Like if you're going up to someone in a park and you're just like throwing water at them or saying fuck you or something, like I think that's like stagnation, and that's like taking the 2016 energy, let's say, that's taking the edgy comedy to the extreme of the other angle, where it's like complete indifference, the opposite of empathy, the complete apathy of any of that. But in a sense, I do think that there's some truth in that too, or that there's some value in that too. Just like I think there's some, like, just like how you're advocating that there's some value in the idea of being empathetic. Which is that, like, I think, again, it's like the willingness to stand against a system of norms and acceptable things, to be like a radical individual who can somehow, enact some change on an individual level, like that's the sort of, I guess the silver lining, or like the good aspect within that, which can of course be used for like acts of great evil and horrible things. It's like, the single guy standing up at Tiananmen Square versus like some sort of mass shooter or something, it's like both of them are radical individuals, but they're using them in different ways. And one way is more clearly peaceful and better than the other. Right. Mm-hmm. So, that's how so like, in other words, this applies to both things, but I think, the way that on the other side of things, on the more collectivist oriented mindset, empathetic oriented mindset that iDubbbz is now adopting, that he's gone full, balls deep in the water with. Yep. Yeah. Is the silver lining of that one is more obvious, I think, than the radical individual one. It's like the silver lining of that one is, like we said, is just having more care and compassion in the world, being more understanding of people and building bridges instead of barriers. Yeah. But the downside of that is like you shut out any individual voices, any challenge to the system, and then you become like an NPC. Like, and that's what I see with when that video is, I see iDubbbz as an NPC repeating the same language, the same talking points. And that's not these things are related. Like, he seems to me, this all comes back to the words you're willing to use to some degree, and to what extent one is controlled by language in their worldview. And that's why I said he had a point. I don't think he had a fully formed philosophy or worldview at all when he was saying either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. But that's a point. It's a logical point. It's like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense rationally. But now he's on the other direction, and it's more like he's disregarded the rationality and the logic aspect of it. And he's just going full like NPC mode, following orders, repeating the same talking points. Instead of challenging language, he's now controlled by it. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. So I agree pretty much with what you're saying here, honestly. Like, I think that you're right. Like the other side of things, the previous place he was in is also full of a lot of truth and silver linings. It's like on one hand, you have like that area of truth, and then the other hand, you have like that compassion area of truth. What I'm advocating for is, put your hands together, and there you go. You have like a complete person. Yeah. But when it comes to the NPC thing, I think that it's just as true of the opposite. Like, both sides have the NPC effect. it's more obvious with the collectivist authoritarian, modern philosophy or whatever you want to call it that we see today. But, just like the same thing applies to, like, you go back 10 years, you look at, like, all the people who are just regurgitating, like, what the quote unquote edgy people were saying and stuff like that. Like, to me, the NPC thing is more about, like, not being a critical thinker and just, like, taking in what you're hearing around you and spewing it back out, which totally iDubbbz is doing that more now than he was before. And it seemed like he was more realized in the previous stage of his life than he is in this new one.
At least in regards to language. And language is important because it's like, again, if he's willing to say things that are not acceptable and grow from it and gain a following from it, that's a completely different perspective than if he's feels coerced or shameful enough to go back on what he said and to conform to what should be said, to what he's told should be said, or what he's informed should be said, should be done as a straight white male, whatever categorization. Once again, like language, I know I'm fixating on this language thing, but it's just like, to me, that's the sign that's not a good direction. In other words, it's like, if the direction you're going in is one that is more controlled by language and propaganda, then it's certainly not more towards truth.
That's like the complication there, I think, comes from, like, what I was saying about how realized he is in one stage of his life versus the other. Like, I think if you take a person who's much more realized in this, like, compassionate, empathetic thinking, they're going to be less controlled by what other people say and more, like, they're going to be coming to those conclusions on their own, and they're going to have, like, their own nuances to it. So, like, that's like a sort of, he's like underdeveloped or something in this part of his life now.
He's definitely underdeveloped. I agree with that. But all of this aside, I really do think we're focusing a lot on Ian, and that's good. But I really do think, I mean, Anissa plays a huge role, because I'm sure you've seen it, right? With guys, with friends of yours. And I think we're all, it's not like any guy's above this necessarily, but there is this power that women have over men when they're in relationships with them, when they're having sex, when they're intimately sharing their emotions, they have that bond. It's like, I think there's a few ways it goes. Like, either the man leads the way, sort of, when it comes to, like, more, I would say, more political career. Let's just keep it political, like, or worldview. Like, when it comes to worldview, if men and women are in a relationship, or whoever, any relationship dynamic. But the point is that one person kind of leads the way. And I think typically, historically, that's been the men doing that. But lately, it's becoming very common, I think, for the types of relationships.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this saying before, behind every great man is a woman.
Yeah, of course. So
I think that it's actually historically been the women who've like...
Well, no. It is women. I mean, that's true. But I'm just saying, like, you could have a man who's a great leader and still leading the perspective of the relationship, right? But but the woman could still be the reason that the man is great. Does that make sense? Like, because it's like the little things, or not even little things, the things that are the most important are not even the most expressible through a philosophy. It's like taking care of a household, making sure that people are feeling cared for and loved, and these kinds of nurturing aspects of life. I think those are probably, so to add to that phrase, behind every great man is a great woman, or whatever. That's what that means to me, I guess. So, like, it is complementary to a man being a good leader that a woman is really the source of his greatness. Does that make, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but...
Makes sense. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying for the most part.
But I guess I want to ask if you've seen, or what your experience has been like with the reverse of that, which I think is like what iDubbbz is in, where there's a girl who is convinced of a certain worldview, is indoctrinated into a certain worldview, and then tries to either successfully or unsuccessfully, usually successfully, bring the man that they're with into that same worldview. And you see the man change from somebody who has their own perspective on life to somebody who's accommodating and acquiescing to his partner's perspective on life. I feel like that's exactly what's happened with iDubbbz.
I mean, if you're asking about what I've seen in my personal life, like maybe it's going to be so anecdotal because like my friends are, you know, the people that I chose to be friends with. But personally, like I actually haven't seen that in my personal life. Like when I think of the most of my friends who are in relationships or married or whatever, for the most part, they found people who are like ideologically or value wise similar to them. I can think of two relationships where the couples, at least when they got together, were on opposite sides. And in one of those relationships, it was like a friend of mine who is super edgy and conservative and like, you know, just generally pretty right wing and fucking funny. And he's engaged to a girl who is what you would pretty much consider your like typical leftist for the most part. And he hasn't changed at all, which I'm very happy about in that sense. Like, I mean, maybe there are ways that I just don't know, but for the most part, as far as I can tell, like he's still very right wing and edgy, based in Red Pill.
And what's she like?
She's not based in Red Pill. Let's just put it that way.
But you do see that like at some point, I mean, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they'll just continue on that way, but it seems like it's hard to, there's certain things that are hard to reconcile over time. Yeah, it's like if they're going to spend the rest of their life
when they have kids, you know, like, I don't know what'll happen there. That's going to be interesting for sure. And then the other relationship I know is someone who is a girl who is based in Red Pilled, just married a guy who is more of your like left-leaning, typical leftist kind of guy. And she actually has like moved more left over the course of their relationship. But that's like the opposite of what you're saying because she's the girl.
No, but it's the same. It doesn't matter if she's a girl or not. It's the principle of one person, usually the man, but doesn't have to be. Like in this case, it's Anissa. But one person in the relationship is sort of leading or swaying the other person to more towards their view. I think ideally in a relationship, this is a synthesized view. Like, in other words,
your views come together, put both hands together.
Your views come together and they complement each other. And there's some things that one side sees, some that the other side doesn't see, and vice versa. And this is always the case. It's just that sometimes things are so radically different that there's no coming together, right? And then that's when you have that's when it's either all or nothing. It's like, okay, one of them goes completely to the other side or it just doesn't work out, you know? Right. But there has to be some level of meeting in the middle. Yeah, compromise and not even compromise. It's like sacrifice. It's like for the greater good. It's like not just...
That is what
compromise... Well, compromise implies like...
Sacrifice for the greater good.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think sacrifice is a little different connotation, but anyways. But yeah, that's what it requires. And in this case, it just seems like it's with a lot of different signs, but like the Discord logs, the clips of who Anissa was and how she presented herself in all those clips of, you know, basically saying that she's attracted to people with clout, with big numbers and all these different things. And the decisions she's made in her life, I think, point to the fact that basically she's kind of led the charge for the worldview and the perspective of politics that iDubbbz has now. And he's been more than happy to, not more than happy, but he's kind of adapted. You know, it's like we saw at first he's being very accepting of sex work, which seemed kind of out of left field given his previous content. And that was like the first place that people, fans of his, you know, questioned him, but most of them stuck around. And then you just seen him further and further descent into a more leftist, whatever worldview, where he's now, even the way he looks. I mean, it's like he's tatted his body up just like her. He looks so bad. He's grown the mullet. And it's like, dude, who are you? Like, what are you trying to be? That's when I see him, that's what I think.
I mean, it's hard for me to like say anything because it's like I get the sense that you're right, that she is leading the charge, but I don't fucking know. Like, it's really hard for me to. The truth is, like, I don't really know anything about her other than the fact that she does OnlyFans. So,
well, I mean, to the extent that we could comment on him, I think that's the same applies to her in the sense that, like, yeah, we don't really know what's going on in his mind either. We don't know if he's being completely genuine. Maybe he genuinely completely
talk about it.
I've heard her say things too.
I haven't, so that's why I'm struggling to say anything, because I literally have never even heard her voice. I just know like what he said, but I intuitively, like, I intuit that you're probably right. That she is like the kickstart to this direction that he's gone in.
Kickstart. Yeah, she's the kickstart
crap.
She was the final one that he couldn't defeat. Yeah.
And then, then throw in like his experiences that he talked about, and that's like the nail in the coffin, so to speak, of pushing him into this next direction.
I'll say that I've met trans people, just to follow his example, I've met trans people, many that know of my content, know of my videos, and even I see them follow me on Twitter or anything like that. And there is a part of me that does think about it like, well, this person might see what I post or what I say, but it doesn't make me compromise any of my beliefs or what I'm doing. It does make me not want to be like offensive for the sake of being offensive, which I've never really wanted to be anyways. But in the sense of like, I'm never going to say like, oh, fuck all trans people or whatever. But because I believe in treating people as individuals, but also I'm not going to compromise. It doesn't make me compromise what I actually want to say or the points I want to make. If I have a criticism of transgenderism or of the LGBTQ movement, I'm going to voice that, but that doesn't mean I hate an individual who identifies as either one of those groups. And I think the people that are cool, they get that. And the people that are trans or gay or whatever they are, whatever they choose to identify, they understand that too. Like when I'm saying, or when anyone is saying those things about a general movement or group or the way that culture is going, it doesn't mean that you're enemies with the individuals of that group.
Right.
And so I think a more mature perspective or whatever is like with iDubbbz's thing. Let's just say, like, if he really believed that he should be allowed to say the offensive things, he can make a bridge with that person, or, let them know like, hey, by showing that he's cool to that person, that he's nice to that person, then that already speaks volumes. But if he's having to like apologize, be like, wow, that made me question everything. It's like, okay, then what did you even believe in to begin with? If meeting one person changes your entire view, you could be a decent person and grow as an individual by seeing that, oh, actually, these groups that I'm thinking about or being offensive towards are made up of individuals who can be very kind people, or people that I can get along with. That is growth, in my opinion. But it's not growth to just question to go back on everything you've ever said after meeting one or two people from groups that might have been offended by you.
Well, not just meeting them, but also having the girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
Opening you up to that perspective.
Right.
The thing is, like, yeah, the difference between you and him is that, like, you aren't having, like, his views completely changed, obviously, as a result of these various experiences, whereas your views remain the same. It's just that, like, you're maybe thinking, like, oh, well, actually, your views just remain the same because you were never, like, edgy for the sake of edgy to begin with. But yeah, like, his views completely changing, I don't know, it's just like, how do I put this? It just feels to me like it's like a light turned on in a dark room, and now he like sees a bunch of shit, and he's like distracted by all like these shiny objects, but like also he has vision that he didn't have before. And so like, yeah, his views, like I agree, his views shouldn't have completely changed, but that takes like an even more grown person to realize that. You know what I mean? Like, the fact is, ultimately, like, what I'm criticizing Ian of at this point is that I actually think that he's just like not that deep of a guy, basically. And that if he was a deeper person, that he would have not completely 180'd. But I do think that, like, to get to that point of deepness, the 180 will help him as long as he's able to get past it. If he gets stuck in this phase, then he'll never get there. But if he can continue to grow past this at some point, then he will be at that sort of deeper level that I like would like to see of him. But the truth is that, like, his worldview is probably a lot more shallow than
Yeah,
I would like it to be. But I don't know.
I think we agree on that.
I could be wrong.
I think Well, to the extent that we could be sure of anything, that's something I agree with you on. That he, no matter what, it's at least showing that has a shallow view.
Yes.
Because, anyways, but I guess we'll see. You know, I don't think he's beyond redemption or whatever. I mean, I hardly think anyone is, but I definitely think that if he keeps going the direction he's going, it's not going to be good for his online career, and he'll probably, I don't know, whatever. We'll see. But my conclusion is like, just stop caring about him, or as like a message to anyone that is not fucking with what he's doing, is like, I'm addressing this now with you because we're viewing this as really people discussing the culture, the way things are going online and people's reaction, because that is interesting and that is indicative of the way things are going culturally. But it's also like, if you don't like what someone's doing online, just don't give him your energy. You know, I agree. Yeah, hating on him or having hate viewers is just actually feeding into what he's doing, and I just think that
he's not
people
doing
should divert their attention
of the hate attention. Honestly, like if he was like he just has he's become lame and has like a view that is like disagreeable, but like whatever, like who cares? Yeah, like if he's so lame, and he is, I agree, he's really lame. So then why is everyone talking about him? Make something better. Like, don't complain about, oh, we want iDubbbz 2016 back. Like, that would be so, like, that's so, what is it? It's a very follower mentality, or it's like a very, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like a very limited mentality to think that like he's the only one who could have done that kind of content, or we need more of him to come back, or we care about him. Like, stop being so invested in him, because he's clearly not invested in you. And he's made that very clear, both from the OnlyFans video to the, you know, the stuff he said recently about his fans. It's like, those fans should get a clue, is what I'm saying, that he's not your, you know, don't look up to him. He's not your online daddy. He's not Happy World Daddy.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. And like I said, like you said, this conversation isn't actually about iDubbbz. That's not what I find interesting about it. It's not you find, it's actually just about like the reaction to iDubbbz, and like the fact that he is like had a perspective change and how people are reacting to that. That's what's interesting. It's like a sociological thing or whatever.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, no, I 100% agree. Stop fucking watching iDubbbz. Like, you don't like his content, and fair enough, because it sucks, or there is none. So just stop watching him.
Yeah. I mean, and if anybody really wants him to change for the better, or to like to make good stuff again, which maybe nobody even cares anymore, I don't know. But if people are like that, then the best thing they can do is just give him space, let him do his thing. And if he comes back making something cool, you'll know, you know, that's the thing, is like, if he actually makes something good again, people will know. But I guess some people probably want to see him continually fail, which whatever. I mean, I think that's still a waste of energy, but if you want to see him continually fail, I guess just keep giving him attention and pressure onto what he's doing right now, and he'll probably keep failing. Maybe he'll eventually fail upwards and make something of it. But I don't know. I think for a while he's on the way out. I think I truly doubt he's going to be. My prediction, I guess, from here onwards is that I think Sam will continually grow as a cultural influence, and people around him will actually gain their own, like we're already seeing, like with Jet, with Brandon, even though Brandon's doing his own thing. But my point is, I think we're going to see more people kind of taking the attitude of, I guess, being apathetic towards what is politically correct, and, you know, being more edgy, being more willing to be like the individual. I think we're going to see more of that. And I think the kind of stuff that Ian is on the wavelength of now is kind of on the way out, at least for now. It'll probably come back in like a few more years. But I think people are sort of tired of this collectivist perspective of politics and of gender or whatever. So I think that's going to be changing.
Yeah, I mean, with that stuff, I don't think it's going to go away that quickly. Like, I think what's happening is we're seeing on the fringes, people have been tired of it for a few years now. And that's like,
well, the fringes are becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, it's trickling down to the mainstream, but the mainstream is very slow to adapt. So what I suspect is like by the end of the decade, we'll be at a point where like we understand these progressive points, but like we have now realized the flaws in how we've been acting on them.
We're going to have a keynote presentation from Ian in about 5 years. So we understand these. We're now going to do better.
Yeah. We're going to say the N-word again, but from an empathetic perspective.
Yeah. That would be great. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that'll happen eventually. Would be cool if Sam continued to like get more popular. I really have no clue what's going to happen with him. I feel like he's so volatile. Like he could just like implode at any point. So I have no idea what will happen there. Sam Hyde, yeah.
I think he's pretty. Wow, we have pretty different reads on it. I feel like he's pretty sturdy. Like I feel like his chance of, I think he's past his most unhinged phase, but that's just what I see.
I feel like within him is this like creature of chaos, you know?
That's within iDubbbz too. It's within iDubbbz too.
It is within iDubbbz too, but it's like really within Sam. Like Sam, I feel like Sam
deep
down is like a fucking chaotic person.
He is, but that's why he's able to make Fish Tank. Like that's the outlet of his chaotic.
That's the outlet right now. But like the outlet was like world peace and stuff before too. But then like it eventually ended up with him like giving money to that, like, what was it? That Daily Stormer or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was just so stupid. Right. And
yeah,
like,
I agree.
I feel like, you know, something stupid like that could just happen at any point in time.
I think he has more to lose now, but maybe I don't know for sure, but I think there's more to lose.
Before that was about to get signed for 100 episodes, which is a lot to lose.
Didn't he do that after he got canceled?
No, he got canceled for doing that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. But that's another Gush. That's another episode of Gush podcast that we'll talk about. Maybe a promised episode that we'll never live up to. But yeah, I think we've said all there really is to say about this topic.
I think so too. If anyone's listening, give us your feedback in the comments. What are your predictions? Where do you stand? And what do you think about what's happening?
Yeah, what do you think about the way like everyone is reacting to this situation? I don't give a fuck what you think.
Should we say the N-word or not?
What?
Should we say the N-word or not? That's really what I want to ask people.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Saying the N-word this whole time. Should I have been the only word that I said?